Hey, welcome to the Get to 20K call. My name is Stephen Yee. I'm your host today. We're lucky to have one of the new up and coming rising stars in the company, Casey Traut. Are you with us, Casey?
I am. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, so we were just talking about how you got started with Family First Life. Let's dive into that. How long have you been here? What did you do prior to Family First Life and all that good stuff so everybody here can know?
Yeah, so I've been at FFL since December of 2020. So I'm like rolling into my 6th month right now.
Awesome.
Before FFL, so I graduated college in 2019. I cheered all 4 years, and then I was working at a cheerleading organization from when I started high school to like a little bit after college. So I did that a little after college, and then I was in like marketing and business development. Didn't really love that because it was like a desk job, and I was like, I'd rather bash my head against a wall, for being honest. So I did that, and then did some like independent contract work throughout 2020. And to be fully transparent, I had stopped working at that full-time marketing and business development at the beginning before COVID started happening. So then when COVID hit, I was interviewing for jobs that people who had lost their job having 20 years of experience were interviewing for. So I'm like up against that. Right. So I was looking for a job like basically all of 2020. And I did some like little, again, contract work at the end, but then someone found me from Family First Life and they had sent me a message.
How did they find you?
LinkedIn. So
no way.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, Nina Damjanovic actually sent me a message, and it might have been Hayden who was recruiting for her, I have no idea, but sent me a message, was like, hey, Casey, have you ever thought about getting your insurance license? And I looked at that and I was like, no. I just was like, eh. And then I took a look at like the video and the model, and I actually sent it to my dad because he's like a big business guy. So I was like, well, what do you think? And he was like, I think you should give it a try. And I was like, he was like, what's the harm? Like, go try it out. And he's like, and if you don't like it at the end of 6 months, or you don't find that, you're making massive waves of success, then don't stay. And I was like, okay. So then I just like jumped right in December, and that was like my full time, and I was nervous and scared, but then I am here now. So
that is so awesome. So, wow. So you actually had talked to your dad and got advice from him to take a look at the company before you fully jumped in.
Yeah. And like, I mean, some people are just kind of gung ho and they're like, I believe in myself, I'm just going to do it. But for me, I like value my family's opinions very much. They've always been pretty supportive, and I know not everybody has that. But for me, I know my dad was like, I want you to reach for the stars. Like, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for you. And I was like, okay, cool. But that didn't completely open up my mindset to being like, can I do this? Everybody has that question at the beginning of like, this is fully commission. Like, I've never done something like that. And so, but having at least one person in your corner is huge, because they're going to help push you along the way, being like, you can do it when maybe you feel like you can't. So right. I did get some advice from him, but then I just kind of jumped in and I listened to people and what they were doing. So that's how that all ended up working out.
That's awesome. So we'll touch on the schooling real quick. So what did you go to school for? If you mind me asking.
So I went to Grand Canyon, and I'm in Arizona, but I went to Grand Canyon and I did business management, and then I had a minor in communications.
Got it. So you said you were doing like a marketing job and you were just not feeling it because it was like a desk job, right? So quick question, and I know it's a leading answer, but it's okay. 4 years in school, marketing job. I'm assuming you've probably learned more about business in the last 6 months working here at Family First Life than you've had at your. That's what I figured. Isn't that crazy?
1,000%. Like at least for me, I learned like on the job. Like it has to be like tangible, and I have to be walking through it. Like just studying something, I mean, I would still recommend school, but like at the same time, it's not for everybody. So kind of just depends. But yes, to answer your question, I have learned way more about business and being an adult in the last 6 months than I did all 4 years of college.
That's exactly how I felt when I came here. Right. So when I got into sales, like my quote unquote mentor was like, dude, do me a favor and go ask your business professor which business he owns. And I was like, that's actually a great question. Right. So I walked into class one day, like I swear, I walked into class one day in my, like, I think it was one of the minor classes. And I was like, hey, professor, what business do you own? And it was not a good
Oh
look.
my gosh. And he's like,
Yeah. And he was like, I don't own a business. I'm a professor. And I was like, got it. And I was like, so why are you teaching me business again?
how to do
Seriously.
business.
Seriously. And then I was like, you're teaching me out of a textbook that you wrote, but you have no experience in. Ah,
Right.
okay, cool. So no, it's fascinating because like once I saw that, I was like, my mom on the other side, my mom was like very similar to your dad, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
She like sixth grade level education. So she wasn't like the brightest of the brightest, but she owned her own business. And like my mom would, my mom's like, hey, help me out with this, help me out with this. And then I'm in the trenches working with her and I'm like learning things
Right.
about the business. And I'm like, dude, I learned more from like working with my mom for a week than I've had in like college for like 2-3 years. And that was
Yeah.
like what was fascinating to me because, here at Family First Life, the beauty of Family First Life compared to other IMOs, this is the reason why I wanted to jump into this. Nowhere else do they teach you how to get staff, get an office, how to
Yeah.
find people to help you grow your business. Like most people at other IMOs just teach you how to sell, 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 sell. And that's it. They want you to be a high paid insurance producer for the rest of your life for that company. While here, it's like the way we've created it is like, no. Like we purposely want you to, turn this into a business by selling in the beginning because you got to fund it. And
Right.
eventually you have the staff and the team and the infrastructure in place so that you can walk away and still be able to manage a team. And I'm like, you learn way more doing that than you can at any quote unquote school. You know what I mean? So let's dive into the in-home and all that stuff now. So you come in, how quick did it take you to write 20 grand a month?
So I was one of those people that didn't come out like swinging, like, when you first start. I mean, I didn't do like awful, but I think my first month I might have written like 7-8K, which for me, you come from a job where you make that in 3-4 months.
Right.
So for me, I was like, all right. But I also knew that I was like, okay, 20K. And everybody had said that. And for me, when I hadn't done that yet, I know if you haven't done that, it seems really daunting.
Mhm.
But Nina has always said to me, once you hit 20K, you don't go backwards. And I was like, how do you figure that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, do you? So once I did it, she is correct. You have already honed your skill, so you don't go backwards from making 20K unless you just stop working half the month. And even then, we're not gonna. You got to keep working. But I would say I think my first 20K month was so I started in December, and I think it was my third month in that I hit 20K, or it was like 19, like it was right there. So I think the very first month was 8K. I think second month was somewhere around like 12, 13. And then my third month was like, I was going to say 19 or 20. And then every month thereafter has been over.
Gotcha. And I know you travel to write business and you write like 30, 40, 50 grand a month traveling too.
Mm-hmm.
And you live in a marketplace where there's not very many quote unquote leads in your backyard. So you kind of almost have to get on a plane or get in a car to go write business. When you got started with us, did like Nina make that a thing that she talked about in the beginning, or how did you get eased into traveling?
So I feel like I actually just took that upon myself a little bit. Like I did go on a travel trip. So I started in December, and then I went on one with like a group of people just to kind of get started in January, and Nina went. So I was like, okay, like I have her like to kind of, help walk me through if I have a ton of questions. Like I ran on my own, but at least she was there. And so with that being said, that leads were like still, I would say pretty decent in Arizona. And then at one point, like, I think it was like February or March, none. Like I went into the CRM and I couldn't find, I was like, I have to write business. So I just found a place with leads and I just went. So I went like to Pennsylvania like 3 times in 1 month. I think that was what created my biggest month. But I also strategized with them. So like, I knew I had to go somewhere. And I was like, well, they repetitively say, go to the leads. If I don't have leads, I can't run. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go somewhere where there's a lot and I'm just going to trust that I can do it. So I was like, all right. But I did strategize with her. If I was like, okay, like, I'm thinking of going here. Do you know what that market looks like? Or she'd be like, no, I don't know anybody there. I haven't run there, but I know this person does. So I would like talk to different people that were in the area of being like, okay, so what's a good county, all that stuff. So as far as travel trips go, I kind of just took it upon myself and I was like, I'm not going to sit there and try and scrape for these things. Like I'm going to go, and if I have to travel 3 out of the 4 weeks of the month for right now, then I'll do it. And I think I told my mom the other day, I don't think I've been in Arizona longer than 1 week total since like March.
Right.
So I had just been going. And, obviously they're supplementing a lot more. So I feel like Arizona has a little bit more. So I'll be here, hopefully just a little bit more. But as far as traveling goes, yeah, I just went because I was like, I want to write business. And if there's potential elsewhere, I'm just going to go.
When you travel, when do you fly in? When do you run? When do you dial? When do you fly out? Like, what's all the details about all that stuff?
So with that, it kind of depends on like what happened, like maybe the week prior. So I personally try and not run business on Sundays because I like to try and keep a Sabbath if I can to kind of chill out, refresh my brain, and get ready to go and run hard the next 6 days. So for me, what I would do and what I felt comfortable with was like I would dial on Monday, and then book up a schedule, and I kind of made a point to myself of I was like, don't book a plane ticket until you're at like 8 appointments, 8 or 10. So that way, you're going out for something. Now I've done it the other way around where I booked it and flew out like maybe late Sunday, booked on Monday. And I was like, well, I'm here, so I'm going to have to make the appointments. And I've been successful both ways. So more on the front end, like more recently, I'll dial like before I leave. And then I'll dial all day Monday. I'll book strategically a really early flight on Tuesday so I can land early afternoon, get to my hotel and book the rest of the night what I didn't book for Wednesday and Thursday. So it's kind of a weird run schedule, but I'll book up the rest that I can. And if I already filled it, I'll start dialing for like little last on Thursday and Friday. So I kind of like to do it where I'll run like 4 days in a row. So I'll dial on Monday, fly out Tuesday, and then book up the rest that I can Tuesday night, run all day Wednesday, Thursday. If there's a no-show, that's dial time. So then I'm dialing to book up Friday, Saturday of what I don't have. Right. And then I kind of just trickle it in that way. So, I go hard on travel trips. So I'm running like that whole time versus taking like 2 dial days. So that way I can get the most out of it. And then I'll tend to fly home either late Saturday or like early Sunday.
Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I've never done it that way. And see, the reason why I'm asking, Casey, is because there's so many ways to do the same thing here. You know what I mean? Like I was talking to Zach Trudowski about it, and he was like, dude, like I always kept my mornings open. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, my first appointment would be at 10, no matter what. I'd run from 10 to 9. And I'm like, that's odd. My first appointment's always at 8, like 8 a.m. And he's like, no, you keep that open for a reason. He's like, because if you don't have appointments, you're dialing from 7:30 to 9:30. And in that 2-hour span, you could probably fill your entire day the following day. And I was like, huh.
You're like, right.
No way. Like, I never thought about it that way. And he was like, that's just how he's done it. And that's how he's taught Easton and Jake and Brittany and all them. And I'm like, yeah, I think that might be a good idea considering how much insurance they write. I should probably listen.
I should do that.
Right. And I'm like, but see, that's the beauty of this thing. It's like, I talked to Ivan Bedroff, and Ivan's like, no, I go with no appointments. I'm like, wait, what? He was like, I'll take a red eye into the hotel, lock myself in that hotel and book 30 appointments in 1 dial day. And I'm like, what if you don't get 30? But like, that's just like, I'm just fascinated with the fact that there's so many different ways to do the same thing and be able to achieve the same result here, which is the reason why I love, what we do. So, cool. So let's say, with the phone, when you got started with us, quote unquote, like you said, you didn't have a sales background or business background. Like, how was getting on the phone for you?
If I'm being fully transparent, it was probably like every other person that had no sales experience. I was like, oh God, I'm going to like say something. They're going to yell at me. You're starting to trickle in all those thoughts. But I really, for me personally, I had gotten used to getting uncomfortable, like with athletics, like I performed like from all the way up throughout high school into college. So sometimes that stuff is uncomfortable or you feel like you're not prepared and you just do it anyway. So I had been prepared with that mentality of like, you're just going to have to do it. I know you don't know what you're doing. Like, you don't feel like you know what you're doing, but
Right.
it works for other people. So, and then my first dial day, I booked 10.
Wow.
And I was even like, I thought I would lucky to get like 5, but see, even then it goes back to like when they say anybody can do it, and I had 0 experience.
Right.
So, and I clearly, I would hope I've gotten like a lot better at the phones since when I first started. So even then, if I could book 10 on the first day, you know what I mean? I was like, well, I can definitely get better from here. So
Right.
just when I first started, I think the biggest thing was being like natural in my approach, like instead of just thinking, oh, I have to say this, you know what I mean, to more
Right.
making it sound like it's a conversation, like an actual conversation. So yeah, the first time in getting on the phones, I was like, and it was more the pressure of I wanted to do well in the field, so I wanted to make sure I had enough buffer in order to write a certain amount. So
Yeah, and that's the thing I feel like, with new agents, they get like I had a new agent that I was working with this past week, and he was like, I made 200 calls, and and this sucks. And I'm like, that's your problem. You only made 200 calls. Like, you're brand new, you should be probably making like 500-600 calls. And they're like, what? I'm like, because right now you lack the skill. So
right,
therefore you have to make up in numbers what you lack in skill
right,
until you can literally set your entire appointment in like 200 dials, then do it. But right now you're not that good. And like in
right.
anything you do, you're gonna suck before you're
Yep.
successful. So therefore, like, you gotta go through the learning. And it was just fascinating because like I took your approach because I coached, high school basketball, and I played high school basketball. So like the normal thought process was like, this is like me going into like the first day of high school and like watching kids that are bigger than me and like, I'm going to get ran over today. And I was like, I'm going to suck.
Right.
It's okay. But I'm going to learn and I'm going to get through it. That was what was like fascinating because like so many people come in and expect to do, the work of a top producer, but I'm like, but you're not there in terms
Right.
of skill. Like yesterday we had our first Zoom dial session and Colton Dewar sets 9 appointments in the first hour. And I'm like, dude, you're on basically track to set your entire run schedule in 2 hours.
Right.
And then like new agents are calling me and they're like, wow, like he's so good. And da, 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 da. I'm like, dude, that's deceiving. Colton writes 80 grand a month. You write
Right.
8. So
Right.
you'll probably need like 10 times the work to achieve the same result he has.
Right.
You know what I mean? And see, that's the thing. But I'm like, it's not that you can't get there. It's just that you're not there right now. And it's okay. So let's say, okay, so you book 10 appointments on your first dial day. You get into the home. Are you nervous? Is this something that just comes natural? How was the
Uh,
presentation?
I got sweet Christopher Bradley. So I actually sold the first guy that I sat, and I was
Oh, you're
like,
lucky.
I know. And so I was like, there's no way this is that easy. I was like, there's no way. And so, but I mean, again, it's just funny when you reflect back on how much you've grown. And so the very first day I was like, it's like this like kind of sketchy like apartment area. And I'm like, okay. Whew. I'm like, all right. So I like get there. I spent like 3 hours in the home because
Wow.
he had like a boatload of medications. Like this was not like someone who was super healthy to where I didn't have to work around that. I didn't know what ROP meant. I was like, oh boy, I'm probably blowing up Nina's phone, like
Right.
texting her. But what I would say that I did a good job of was no matter how much internally I felt like this, I didn't act that way. So he was older. He kind of wasn't. If I had had a super with it person, I probably would have not have survived. But he was like, he was just super chill, and it ended up working. But that just goes to show I had no idea what I was doing. Literally none. He had no idea that I didn't know, but I just acted like I did. And so I got help from my upline. And I think his premium, I mean, it wasn't huge, but it was like $52 if you times that by, that's more than I made in like 3 weeks of my other job. So I was just like, what just happened?
Right.
So as far as going into the home, I know I am someone that likes to be prepared, and I like to show that I'm a professional and that I can actually help you. So I think what I was nervous about was being like, I'm not going to know what to say, but that's what most people go through. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. How do I overcome this? But it really, truly is like just a thrown into the fire. You just got to do it. enough times to where you're like, okay, I don't say that. I do say that. And kind of as a side tangent, but like a little helpful piece was I took it literally when Nina was like, call me in the home every time and call me. I was like, okay, I probably called Nina or Hayden or Jordan or whoever, like easily over 20 times a day. Like I'm not even exaggerating, because I was like, if I repeat the same habit that failed in the home, I'm just going to continue to not succeed. So I called her whether I sold or not, in the home, out of the home, walked through it with her of like, this is what happened. She was like, okay, great. And so then eventually, obviously you wean off of that because you get, your skill. But
Good.
I would say, at the very start of the home, I was super nervous of being like, I don't know like what to even write. And it's, just like anything else. When you practice, you're just going to start to know. You're just going to start to get with it, and you're going to understand, and you won't know everything. But I was nervous for sure at first, but I think I tried to put off a demeanor that I was like, even though I'm super nervous, I can kind of like put on a professional facade to where I make you feel more comfortable.
Right.
So
it's like, I like to tell people, it's like the duck, right? That's floating on the pond. Like
Yep.
Above surface, it's like calm as heck. And then below surface, he's treading. That's what he's like, his feet are moving because he's nervous, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how we are like as brand new agents. And we have some brand new agents on here. And I want you to understand, the guys that are new, you're not by yourself. Like, yeah, you're going to run the appointment by yourself, but you're a phone call away from getting help. And so like what I've learned, very similar to you, Casey, is like I reached out a ton when I was brand new. It was almost like having a crutch there that I can lean on. But what happened was like you start seeing the same medications over and over again. You start seeing the same scenarios over again, and you go, I don't got to call Nina on this one because I know the answer.
Right.
And then what happens is like closer to your 100th appointment, you don't need to do it as much anymore. And that's when you become, like I always tell people, Casey, like you got to run 100 appointments as quick as you can, not because I just want you to run 100 appointments, but it's because your 100th appointment is way better than your first one, like far. Like it's a completely different person. You've probably seen every in-home possible scenario that you can, and you started to understand what works and what doesn't work, right? Like you said, you're like, hey, I shouldn't say that anymore.
Right. That didn't work. Yeah.
But you learn that. And everybody has their own in-home. So like if you were to look at Casey's in-home, it'd be completely different than Brandon's. It'd be completely different than mine. It would be completely different than Will Lord and like Bruce Williams. Like everybody's in-home is completely different, but it works for them. And that's what a new agent needs to understand is like, right now you're just trying to figure out what works, and then eventually you can throw your flavor on it. See, I see so many times like new agents come in and they try to throw their own flavor on it. And I'm like, dude, but you're not even good. You don't even know if that works.
Right. Right. For sure. And I think it's all about like, so kind of as a good example of that, everybody does it differently. Nina and Hayden write a ton of business, but their in-home and how they approach is completely different than mine. And I learned that because I tried to go about like how they did it, where it was like, we don't really talk about the voided check or the account information until we get to that part in the application. That to me made me really nervous. Right. And I was like, and I had gotten slapped on the hand so many times because when I would ask, like it didn't end up working out for me. Like I felt like I still got information that way, but I was like, I don't feel comfortable. Like for me presenting it that way. And so then I heard a different way to present it that I was like, that makes more sense. And so I switched to saying it at the beginning. So now I know if Betty's going to have an issue giving me her account information in the first 10 minutes and she not giving me, I'm out. So I don't waste like an hour and a half sitting there getting to the end and they're like, oh, we're not giving that to you. Cause I had that happen. I think Grady says it. You learn two different ways. One is from repetition and one's from emotional impact. And that one was emotional because I sat there for over an hour and a half and I was super late to my next appointment and they were like all about it. And I talked, granted, I probably could have presented it a different way. I'm sure Nina would have sold it. But for me, I was still kind of new. But so I talked about that at the end and they were like, oh no, we're not giving you the information, whatever. And I left and I was super frustrated. And I was like, okay, there's probably got to be a better way that I could maybe present this, or maybe I just said it wrong, whatever. So I just switched to like saying it at the beginning of like, hey, So today's super simple. We're going to submit a request to see, if the carrier will take you. Unfortunately, I'm not the carrier. I can't approve everybody.
Right.
But what they're going to do, since we're not running any medical stuff, they're going to run your social, make sure that you are who you say you are. No one's trying to take anything out in your name. They're going to pair that with bank information to make sure there's no prior insurance fraud. If you do get approved, you have a valid US bank account and you're not being shady with anybody else's information. And the last thing is your MIB. Make sure you're not on any crazy meds before you pass. Like if you're going to pass the next 2 days, does that make sense?
Right.
And then they're like, yeah. So they've already heard me say it. So that's the adjusting piece of people do things differently and still write a lot of business. So.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, because Brandon does it that way. I don't. I do it the way that Nina does it.
Right.
But again, everybody has their own flavor and it all works. You just got to do something, right? So, what's your lead flow look like?
So obviously, it depends on which state I'm in. But I would just hopping back and forth. So I have done different things and still kind of trying to figure out, depending on the state, with, which ones I prefer better in that area, where I'm like, oh, I've run final expense here. And then in Cincinnati I did great. So I'll kind of just keep that going. So as far as lead flow, especially in Arizona, you do have to be a little bit more strategic of okay, if I want to dial, let's say FEX, I'll order a week and a half out, let them trickle in, and then call those there, basically almost instant books. So I'll have that on the back end, and then I'm grabbing whatever I can from the CRM. So I get my hands on whatever I can and I put it and I get it into the CRM so that way I'm ready to go for dial day. So, and then in different areas, I'm starting to run more mortgage. So it really does just kind of depend on the area, on what I'm preparing myself with. But what I will say for sure is I always have at least minimum 60 new leads, minimum. And then I always shoot for 100
right
to have on a dial day. So that way I don't feel like when Betty screamed at me and hung up that I had to book her. You know what I mean? So now I have I'm right. I got 90 other people to call. So
okay. How much do you spend a week on leads, you think?
On average now it's probably anywhere. I would say the low end is $1,000 and on the high end is around 1,800, 1,900.
Right. And you write 30, 40, 50 a month.
Yep.
See, that's for me where in the beginning, I had no problem. And I want the new agents to understand this is I wasn't trying to be profitable day one. And it would be nice, but it's it wasn't my goal. My goal was to learn, right? Like I kind of just told you, Casey, my mom ran a business, a traditional business, and it took her 2.5 years to break even. And you don't have to wait that long here, because 2.5 years from the start date, you'll probably be a multimillionaire here. Seriously.
Right.
But in the beginning, I was if I spent 1,000 on leads and only made $1,000, I'd be okay. I'm not hurting for that. Right. But it was I just wanted people to understand. It was because what happens is you spend 1,000 to make 1,000, and you spend 1,000 to make 2,000, you spend 1,000 to make 3, and you eventually just get better. And in the beginning, I had to spend twice as much. So I was spending 1,500, 2,000 a week just to make $3,000. And everybody's wow, you're not as profitable as I am. And I'm I don't care. I'm just going through my learning curve. Because what happens is I'm very comfortable spending 1,500 to 2,000 a week. So what happened was when I got good, that was when the 40, 50K came nothing. Because now it was you said, the quality of leads. And then the thing about having a lot of leads, and for the new agents that don't understand this, is you don't care you get cussed out or hung up on when you have 99 other leads to call, right? And you don't quick set everybody because you actually book people that want to see you, right? That was the biggest thing. Is what's the point of setting 30 appointments when 20 of them are not going to be home? They're not going to be home, and they know they're not going to be home.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, I got really good at understanding, let's set appointments where they knew I was coming. I knew I was going to be there, and they knew I was coming for insurance. Not just to drop off information or whatever it was, you know what I mean? And what happened was we were setting the same amount of appointments, but the quality of appointments got better.
Right.
And I don't think I'm very good in the home, but it was when they fill out a form, like Sean says, it's dude, you're just there to give them what they qualify for and you're good.
Right.
So Casey, can you give, if you were hiring a brand new agent, let's say they're on the call right now, and you go, hey, like the guy says, or the girl says, Casey, I want to write 20 grand this month, right? In the next 4 weeks, I want to write 20 grand. What are you teaching them?
What I instantly tell people that are like coming into the business, so like you're saying, like just a new agent, is to be, as far as mindset goes, be incredibly coachable. Ask a boatload of questions and
Right.
don't hesitate to do it because you don't know, excuse me, you don't know what you don't know. And
Yep.
you cannot help your clients in the home if you don't know. You can't help you can't help them. Like if you can't even book them on the phone, you can't get in the home. And so my biggest thing is to just ask a ton of questions and don't think you're bothering people, because everyone here is willing to help you. I promise. Like if I had reached out to you, like when I very first started, even though you don't know me at all, you know the struggle that like I'm going through as a new agent. So you're more than willing to help out.
Right.
And that happened with Brandon Kitchings. He was so great to me, and I will like always be super thankful to him for it, because he's not like in my agency,
Right.
but he knew I was new. And when I was asking questions, I knew he was a top producer. And he was taking time to like stop and look me in the eye and answer all my questions when I knew he had phone calls blown up in his ear and he had other agents and whatever. So someone will always turn around to help you.
Right.
Always. So what I would say to a new agent is be like incredibly coachable, ask a ton of questions. And when someone says to do something because it works, so spending over 500 on leads, I know it's scary, especially like I get it, because I had like maybe transparency, like $3,000 in the bank account when I started, because I wasn't working full time at that point. I was trying to, but didn't have it. So I was like, I couldn't even tell you the last time I spent 500 on one thing, like
Right.
in a long time. And I was like, but it works. So I'm just going to do it. So then obviously I started moving into the grand. So I would also say, when you're hesitant to push that button of complete purchase on the CRM, don't think, just click it, because you are going to, once it's done, and you're like, okay, cool. So I know you might be nervous, but jump into it, because these people have done it before you and they're not going to steer you wrong. So if for some reason, like let's say a lead batch wasn't great and you spent like 500 or $1,000, like at that point, again, it turns back around to, what did I just say? Ask a ton of questions. Like, so I'm hitting this, and this on the phone, or on the in-home, I had like this happen more than once, and you clear it up to where the next batch of leads that you get, you'll book like twice as many appointments and sit with people and close even more, because you already asked on what not to do. So I would just say, really trust the process as much as you possibly can. And don't be afraid to reach out for help to literally anybody, because everybody here is willing to help.
Right. You know what was cool about what you just said? It reminded me of two things. Number one, The Office, and then number two, about leads. We just had this new agent, literally brand new. She picked up, like my buddy gave her like 3-year-old Facebook leads, right? She picked them up and she wrote $5,000 on that first batch, right? Here's what was fascinating. He gave that same batch of leads to another agent that we thought was really good, that had the skill, that like, he was like, I'm not afraid of work. And I'm just, I'm not afraid to be on the phone and That same guy goes, these leads suck, I quit. And what I've realized was, it's not the leads, it's the agent. They're just not as good yet. And it's okay. But like, if you have a negative attitude and if you quit and you throw all that negative vibe out there, like that's what you're going to get. And see, like I say that because like one of the agents on here, his name is David, right? David works with me. He was in my backyard. When David got started, I literally gave him, Casey, seriously, I gave him all my mortgage leads from like a year ago. Yeah. And I was like, he's gonna get his face kicked in and it's going to hurt. He called me and he was like, hey, I'm sitting down with Anna. And I'm like, wait, what? He was like, yeah, I got like, right. And I was like, dude, call me after your appointment. Right. And he was like, all right. So he calls me and I'm like, dude, how many appointments you got today? He's like, I got like 8 appointments. I'm like, off of what leads? He was like, the ones you gave me. And I was like, you actually called them? He was like, what was I supposed to do? Just hang on to them? I'm like, hey, good job, David, right? Casey, let me tell you, he wrote 43 grand off my old leads.
Holy crap.
And I'm supposed to be a blah, blah, blah Hall of Fame producer. And that's for me, like,
Right.
proof that like, dude, just some people need to work. Like you said, if you only have a little bit of money and you swipe your credit card for the leads or your debit card for leads, you gotta work. If you buy the leads and it just sits in your CRM or you make 3 phone calls and you walk away, don't expect to get a result. You know,
Right.
that was the craziest part, was like, it had to activate the work inside you. And the last thing we'll do, and for those of you that are on here that have any questions, feel free to shoot it in the chat or the Q&A. You said something that was magical, right? You said something about working in an office, because Brandon's in the same office as you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, as a brand new agent with this whole work spots thing, being able to literally work in an office and to be able to plug in with other top producers. The beauty of it is Brandon's, like you said, Brandon's not even in the same quote unquote financial line. Like, he doesn't make an override off of anything you do, but he helps you. You want to know why he does that, Casey? Because other people did the same for him and other people did the same for me. And like, that's just our culture here at Family First Life, right? So can you talk about, like, for brand new agents, why like even though they might want to hide in their house and dial out of the bedroom, it's smart to go plug into an office and just to be able to listen to the conversations and learn, you know, because what happens is like, you're the new girl in the office that goes, I'm going to know every single one of you guys because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And then like 3 months from now, you're the person that they're asking questions to. It's just this cycle that we create in the office culture, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the same thing, like just the culture here at FFL in general. Like, I mean, kind of as like a side tangent, but it goes into what you're asking, is like, I've always been on a team. So I've always felt like the camaraderie. But what I will tell you is, like, even on a team aspect, and I had been on one, again, since I was really young, but consistently since like middle school, I have never had a team of so many people that want me to win just as much as I do since till FFL.
Right.
Like, and that's genuine. And I've been on a team with people in college for 4 years. And so, you know, that, I mean, I guess that's a different area where, you know, you're kind of being more competitive for your spot. However, like, coming to FFL, everyone wants you to win. Every single person you come across will cheer you on and will like be there to help you. And so, to your point of going into an office, like, of course, that's another step that's uncomfortable for me, because I'm like, I don't know anybody. I could like suck on the phone, but I'm like, but that's the whole point, is if you suck, you want to not suck. So if someone hears you that's better on the phone, they're going to turn around and tell you very kindly, like, hey, like, they're going to listen to your conversation. Or I've had even people, as I'm talking on the phone and they can hear I'm not overcoming an objection, they'll lean over and be like, say this. And I'll be like, okay. And then I like pivot it over. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know, whatever. That's just how it goes. But I had people even save me in the middle of a conversation being like, say this, because they were leaning and listening. I can remember the first appointment I booked, I was in Nina's office and I was kind of secluded and I was like, okay, you got to get out there. But I was in Nina's office and I had I had like three people like leaning in as I'm booking my first appointment. Like, literally someone is leaning over my chair and they're like cheering me on. And then I booked it and I got off the phone. They're like, ah! Like, you know, whatever. And so, because that's a big deal. That's a really big deal when you have never booked an appointment and you're really nervous and all these things. But, you know, the being in an office and being surrounded by people, granted, I am a very big people person. So like, I like to be around people in general. But again, to a new agent, like, push yourself to get very uncomfortable, because a ton of growth happens there. No one likes being uncomfortable. I don't care how much they say it. Deep down, you would like to be in a comfort zone, because it is comfortable, shocking. So when you're uncomfortable, you are forced to do things that make you think a lot harder and process differently. So what I would say is you're going to shorten your learning curve by a lot if you're in the office, or, I mean, if you're in a state that doesn't have one, being on dial team,
Yep.
like, I know people talk about that over and over and over again, but like, I didn't even really start hopping on it until I started traveling, because I was always in the office. But like now when I hop on it, I'm like, okay, there's a team of people here that, again, I unmute myself. I'm like, hey, Jamie, I'm not booking whatever. Can I unmute myself and you listen to me? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So if he's not on a call, I'll unmute myself, I'll do it. And he'll literally coach me right there if it didn't work. Or if it did, he'll be like, this is what you did great. Right. So you have access to live coaching, both in the office and like when you're dialing. Like there are people who book so many appointments, like write so much premium, that are willing to be like, yeah, hey, Casey, what's up? Like if I ask for help. Right. And so it just all goes back to like the camaraderie of like, if you are close to an office, get in there, if nothing else, to like show your face and to show that you care about what you're doing, that you're willing to learn, because people are willing to help people who want to learn and who are actually really trying. So that's what I would say.
That was the best part, man. Like it was just, your learning curve gets shortened because of instant feedback.
Right.
You know, like I remember when I first, this is how long I've been here. I dialed at Andrew's old office, not the one in Vegas, like in Hesperia. And I remember I was making dials outside of Andrew's office, and he literally walks out of his office and goes, dude, what the heck are you saying? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think I'm doing what he's like, don't say that ever again, you know? But it was funny because it was instant. Can you imagine if I was at home and I kept saying the wrong thing? I got really good at perfecting the wrong thing and saying it to the right person. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm like, man, I can't book any appointments. It's because nobody's there to listen.
Right.
You know? And that was the part that was so crazy to me, was like, one of the things, and I'm pretty sure you're the same way. It's like, you see some of these people and you're like, I just saw Brandon do a podcast. I just saw Grady on this. And you're like, I'm not going to be a jerk and like take so much of their time. So like when I ask them a question, I'm going to actually, number one, listen to the answer and apply it. Because like that's like the worst thing you can do, is ask someone for advice and then just like let it go, you know, one ear out the other. And it's fascinating how many people do that, you know? So, and you know, I say that because like Brandon's so great at helping people. And it's like, but if I feel like he helps people because so many people outside of his organization, like kind of like yourself, take what he says and actually puts it in place.
Right.
While a lot of people that he works with directly, they go, oh, that's Brandon. And I'm like, dude, like, you're never a prophet in your own backyard and you get tone deaf to your own team. But I'm like, dude, stop listening to the tone and just listen to the message, because the message is the same. Right. You know, so Casey, thank you for jumping on. Brandon and Teresa said they're very proud of you and they're excited to see your growth. Do you have any closing remarks for us as you leave? I mean, most people are trying to run for, you know, we're halfway through the year. July is going to be a 5-week month. So we're going to have record breaking, you know, numbers next month. Yep. What are you trying to do? If you were them, how are you setting up to have a massive, massive July?
I would say if you are hesitant at all, again, it kind of, I mean, might be like beating a dead horse, but to set yourself up for a good month, do what you haven't done yet to be successful. And you know exactly what that is. Right. So what does that mean? Like dialing and pushing yourself and having integrity with yourself. If you say you're going to do something, like, you know, do that, because that's just the next step for you to have a more successful next day. Like, do yourself a favor. And I've seen that quote so many times, and work hard now. So that way it gets easier for you. So like, it may not feel like it's going to get easier. It gets easier. I promise. And so, or you just get better. Like you just get better. Maybe it's not easier, but you get a lot better. So you know how to handle things. So I would say for a 5-week month, like going into that, if you have not jumped over the whatever hump of like doing a grand a week for leads, do it. Right. Just do it. I promise, it's been done time and time again. Like I see it from everyone. that if you spend more, you will make more. If you lean in to get coached, you will make more. If you ask questions, you will make more. If you actually listen and apply what people say, you will make more. So, and not just make more money for yourself, you'll make a greater impact on the people you sit with because you know how to lead them to the correct decision. So again, it's not really about you, but like taking your client's hand and being like, if I am too in my own head and have too much pride to ask a top producer what I should do, like you're hurting your client because you didn't know how to set it up correctly. And so, you know, like that, it's not just about you of being like, how good can I be in the home? It's like, I didn't know how to handle that. And a top producer would have, and now they don't have protection because I didn't know what to say. So I'm going to darn well make sure I don't do that again. Right. And you're going to like ask a question. So that's what I would say all encompassing is just like really, really lean in. And if you haven't like made a dent on, you know, again, taking that next step of doing something that really challenges you, do it. Just don't think twice about it. I can be a chronic overthinker, but I've learned like in this business, like you just got to go for it and people will help you along the way. So that's what I would say to have like a massive month. And, you know, as far as like emotions go, like definitely keep them in check. They can lead you to a certain point of, again, emotional impact of like, I didn't do well today or this or that or the other. But again, like put that in check of like, okay, if I just don't quit, I'm going to get really good. Like just don't quit and continue to work really, really hard and you're going to get a lot better. So that's kind of what I have for you guys for July.
Casey, thank you so much for jumping on with us. You're the best. And I'm waiting to see your record month in July. So if there's anything that we can do to help, please let us know. But you're a rock star, and I appreciate you taking time out your day and sharing this knowledge with us. So
thank you so much for having me. I hope you guys all got something out of it. So, and you guys go have a killer rest of your June and July.